Halo Combat Evolved, a sci-fi shooter developed by Bungie and published by Microsoft for the original Xbox in 2001. In Halo, you play as a nearly 7-foot tall armored super soldier named the Master Chief as you battle an alien force known as the Covenant that threatens humanity. The game begins as you wake up out of cryostasis aboard your ship, the Pillar of Autumn. The Pillar of Autumn is soon attacked by Covenant forces and boarded, leading you to grab a weapon and face off against the threat. But not before your commanding officer, Captain Keyes, is preparing to abandon ship. Captain Keyes entrusts you with protecting the artificial intelligence known as Cortana. Cortana's chip can be inserted into many interfaces, including the back of Master Chief's helmet, where she serves as your companion throughout the game.
Your architecture isn't much different from the Autumn's.
Don't get any funny ideas.
Captain Keyes hands you an unloaded Magnum and orders you to abandon ship with Cortana. While running to the escape pods, you meet several of your ship's Marines engaged in heavy fighting with Covenant forces. Picking up some ammo for your Magnum and finding an assault rifle, you join in on the fight. Right away, you'll notice that the Marines aren't just typical gritty, voiceless soldiers. Instead, they have a fun personality where they are constantly losing hope upon seeing the Covenant, but gaining it back again after seeing the Master Chief turn the odds in their favor. The Covenant forces also have pretty fun personalities, like when the grunts start frantically yelling and screaming in terror and begging for their life as you decimate their entire squad. The ship is suffering heavy damage, and so there's exploding bulkheads and fire sprouting everywhere as you fight the Covenant in the tight hallways. This level is mostly pretty straightforward. The hallways of the ship do somewhat branch out, but ultimately lead in and out of the same places. The Magnum and the Assault Rifle are the two standard human weapons, and each have their purpose. The Assault Rifle has a high rate of fire, magazine capacity, and spread, but with moderate damage, making it great for laying down suppressive fire against lightly armored grunts. The Magnum is needed for more precise shots, having pretty decent damage and even a short zoom-in mode. It can take out grunts in one shot if you hit them in the head. Grunts are essentially the Covenant's cannon fodder, wielding relatively weak plasma pistols, a low amount of armor with no shielding, and an abysmal sense of morale. Against the other alien races in the Covenant, you're gonna have to change up your tactics a bit. The other enemy introduced here are the Elites, which serve as squad leaders for the Covenant forces. Elites are tall, slender, smart, and agile. Each of them comes with personal shields on top of their armor, which can be tough to break through. Master Chief also has his own personal shields, which perhaps makes the Elites the most worthy match for you. Not only can they tank a lot of damage, but they can leap around, dodging your bullets and grenades, even staying behind cover to regenerate their shields if need be. The good news is that if you manage to take out a squad's elites, the grunts will panic and completely lose their morale and run for the hills, allowing you to mop up the rest of the squad quite easily. Already in the first mission, you get a pretty good sense of the dynamic within the enemy squads. You learn that different weapons are useful for different scenarios and what role each enemy type plays. You'll notice that you can only carry 2 weapons. This isn't much of a problem now, but it becomes somewhat of a nuisance later on. As mentioned before, you have personal shields on top of your health that can be recharged when not taking damage. As for your health, you can only bring it back up by finding medkits around the levels. The Chief can also carry a lot of grenades on him, 4 frag grenades and 4 plasma grenades to be exact. Frag grenades have a large blast radius and are great for throwing in the middle of a group of enemies. The plasma grenades, which are of Covenant origin, have a smaller blast radius but are sticky and can be attached to enemies when thrown on them. These are very useful for taking out singular opponents with a lot of health, like elites, if you can manage to stick it, that is. So eventually you reach the escape pods and blast off with Cortana and a few Marines. At this point, the Pillar of Autumn is in free fall, going straight towards a massive ring-shaped installation. It is also the only available place to land, so you're forced to make an emergency landing there. Due to your heavy power armor, only you and Cortana survived the crash, which left the rest of the Marines dead on impact. This mission opens up things quite a bit. Unlike the previous mission, which was essentially a bunch of connected linear corridors, this level is much more open, with a ton of space to move around in. And you are gonna have to start moving, as the Covenant has patrols out looking for survivors of the crash. The Covenant have these really cool fighter ships that are called Banshees, probably because they emit a wailing sound as they fly around. Cortana aids you in evading the enemy patrol, and eventually you run into another group of Marines that survive the crash. After helping them fend off a few waves of enemies, a friendly Pelican gunship formerly from the Pillar of Autumn comes and drops off a vehicle for you. You are introduced to the Warthog, an armored car that can drive off-road and sports a powerful chain gun. You can assume any position on the car, but you'll probably want to be in the driver's seat because the AI isn't particularly good at driving. In any case, once you get in, a couple nearby Marines will hop on to man the other positions. From there, you drive around the map, finding other survivors from the crash, and help them fight the Covenant as you call for gunships to evacuate them. The sniper rifle can be found in this mission. It only has a 4-shot magazine, but each shot is extremely powerful and can take out most enemies in 1 or 2 hits. You also encounter another Covenant race called the Jackals. Jackals are unarmored and carry the plasma pistol just like the Grunts. However, they each carry a small energy shield in their hand that is capable of blocking their entire body from small arms fire. You're gonna have to get around their shield somehow, whether it's by shooting through the gaps, getting around them, or just lobbing a grenade and blowing them up. In any case, the Jackals add an additional layer to the typical Covenant squad that you'll have to account for. After rounding up the surviving Marines, you head out onto your next mission. This time, your task is to rescue Captain Keyes, who's being held captive on one of the Covenant's battlecruisers called the Truth and Reconciliation. Armed with a sniper rifle, you and a team of Marines drop in under the cover of night and make an assault on the ship's gravity lift. There's some heavy resistance on the ground, and at this point in the game, the difficulty starts to ramp up just a little bit, with many Jackals and sometimes multiple elites in a single squad. And often you'll be fighting multiple squads at once, so having a strategy in order is key to not getting killed on the higher difficulties. This mission introduces a couple new things, but first I'm gonna go over some of the Covenant weapons, as I've neglected them thus far. I said before that the plasma pistol is relatively weak compared to the Magnum, but that's not completely accurate. The plasma pistol has a charge-up attack that can completely disable certain things like an elite's shielding, making it an excellent tool in combat. You can also rapid fire it as fast as you can pull the trigger, making it an extremely accurate and useful weapon all around. It's only really weak in the hands of the Grunts, who fire it very slowly and almost never use the charge-up attack. Jackals, on the other hand, fire it pretty rapidly, and they aren't afraid to use the charge-up attack and completely deplete your shields in one shot. Next up is the plasma rifle, which is mostly wielded by elites. The plasma rifle is one of my favorite weapons in the game, and probably my favorite Covenant weapon due to its versatility. It has a high rate of fire with decent damage and can stun enemies when they're shot repeatedly. The main drawback is that it will overheat if shot continuously, and as it overheats it loses accuracy. This can be handled pretty easily though if you practice good trigger discipline and don't just hold down the trigger. The plasma rifle is useful against most Covenant enemies, and since its main drawback can be mitigated somewhat, it's a pretty solid weapon to use in most situations. Anyway, let's move on. Plenty more weapons to talk about later. In this part of the mission, we can find new things like the Shade Turrets, which are usually manned by Grunts and provide quite a bit of firepower for the Covenant. You're going to want to take these guys out as fast as possible. There's also a couple power-ups you can find, like an invisibility cloak and overshields. The cloaking can help you sneak or maneuver around enemies as they have a tougher time seeing you. Meanwhile, the overshields are simply just an additional layer of shielding that doesn't recharge. Once it runs out, it's gone. Upon arriving at the gravity lift and fending off a couple waves of enemies, a new Covenant race is introduced. This time it's the Hunters. Usually in pairs, these heavily armored meat tanks boast a large amount of health and armor that can't be broken through with conventional weapons. The method to beating these guys is hitting their unarmored weak spots, the main one being a huge gap in their armor on their back. It's best to take these guys on with a squad of Marines helping you so you can easily circle around them and hit them in the weak spot. If you get too close, they'll whack you with their massive shielded arm, and if you get too far, they'll shoot at you with their powerful plasma cannons attached to their arms. As long as you keep your cool and maneuver well, you can take these guys out without too much trouble. And from here, we head up the gravity lift with a team of Marines and infiltrate the Covenant ship. Once you're inside, everything is quiet. Too quiet. The Marines start shaking in their boots. You notice doors opening but no obvious movement. Then bam, a stealth elite wielding an energy sword wipes out a Marine in a single blow and starts charging you. Stealth elites can be slightly difficult to see, but combined with the energy sword, they can be very lethal, usually killing you in a single hit if you get too close. Thankfully, elites using a stealth cloak can be taken out just like any other elite once you identify them. Unfortunately, you can't pick up the energy sword and wreak havoc with it, which is a shame. A weapon you can pick up though is the Needler. Now, this weapon has been in use by the Covenant for a while already in the game, but I'm just talking about it now. And it has these tracking needles that hone in on whatever target you're aiming at. The needles themselves don't do much damage at all, but when multiple needles start building up on a target, they can explode and cause a massive amount of damage. It's a great weapon if you use it correctly, but probably isn't the best choice when you just need some conventional firepower. And for that reason, it isn't my favorite. It's very useful in certain situations, but not as useful as, say, the plasma pistol. Alright, so we fight through the ship and head towards the brig so we can rescue Captain Keyes. Upon rescuing him, he talks about what he has learned about the ring world you've been fighting on. The Covenant calls it Halo. After accessing the Covenant BattleNet, Cortana explains that to the Covenant, the Halo ring holds a religious significance, and it also is believed to be some kind of weapon with enormous power. Apparently, the Covenant are looking for Halo's control room so they can use it. Realizing that Halo could be used as a weapon against humanity, Captain Keyes assigns us a new mission. Beat the Covenant to Halo's control room so we can stop whatever they're planning. Chief takes point and leads the team out towards the hangars. You may encounter some elite zealots who have golden armor and usually are sporting an energy sword. Unlike the stealth elites, these guys have way more health and shields and are tougher to take down. They're usually the most lethal Covenant foot soldier in a given squad. Though when you encounter them here, you have a whole squad to help you, so it's not too much of a problem. But you will notice your Marines starting to drop like flies against the energy sword blade, so you want to deal with them as soon as possible. Okay, let's pause for a second. You know I'm mentioning that this is the first time you see these elites with golden armor and such? That may not be the case for everyone. See, it actually depends on what difficulty you're playing on. If you're in legendary mode, I think you may actually encounter certain tougher enemies a bit earlier. And if you're playing on easy or normal, you may encounter them later. The entire difficulty curve of the game changes depending on which mode you're playing on. When you reach the hangar, your friendly dropship can't make it inside, and so Captain Keyes orders the team to commandeer a Covenant dropship. And with that, you fly on out of the battlecruiser and begin the hunt for the control room. Your first task is to find the Silent Cartographer, a map room on Halo that can locate the control center. You and a large team of Marines storm the beach of an island that is believed to contain the map. The Covenant is already here. They're searching for the map so they can locate the control center as well. This level is pretty big. You engage enemies all over the island, and you also get a Warthog to drive around in as you look for the map room. Prior to now, levels have either been linear interconnecting hallways or big open areas, but this mission sort of combines the two. There are portions on the surface of the island that are wide open, and portions inside different buildings that are more enclosed. The map design really branches out and varies greatly from this point forward, which is pretty cool. This mission is pretty long, and you'll be going through various outdoor and indoor areas. You'll also be able to find the rocket launcher here. The rocket launcher is basically exactly what it sounds like, though it can fire 2 rockets before having to load in more. It's great for taking out armored opponents like the hunters or enemy vehicles. Remember when I said that you can only carry 2 weapons? Yeah, this is the point where that kinda starts becoming an issue. I know it isn't for realism's sake. I mean, you're a super soldier in heavy armor. Surely you can carry more than 2 weapons. If I had to guess, this is a limitation that was in place because the game was originally designed to be played with a controller on the original Xbox, where having more than 1 button for switching weapons would have been an issue. It's kind of a bummer, but at the same time you have to realize the entire game's enemy encounters are probably designed to account for the fact that you'll only be carrying 2 weapons. If you just modify the game to be able to carry more than 2 weapons, there's no telling how much the gameplay would change. I guess we'll never know, and we don't really need to know either, since Halo's design clearly already works very well. But it's interesting to wonder what the game would have played like if it wasn't designed for the original Xbox. I know very early in development it was actually supposed to be an RTS at some point, and eventually was switched to being an FPS. That was pretty interesting to read about. Anyway, so eventually you find the map room, and it points to an installation somewhere underground. Apparently Halo has an internal honeycomb structure of tunnels, and the control center is located somewhere inside. Cortana suggests that we drive a Pelican straight down and do an aerial insertion into the tunnels. We don't get the go-ahead from Captain Keyes since he's apparently out of contact, and so we just descend into the ring in search of the control center. The pilot can only go in so far, and is forced to drop you off. What follows next is your long journey finding your way to the control center from here. This is probably the longest level in the entirety of Halo's campaign. The Covenant are deployed here in far greater numbers than before. They're also fielding some more vehicles like the Wraith tank and the Ghost, along with the previously seen Banshees. Most of the level is in a snowy outdoor environment, though it's clearly not a natural landscape as there are networks of tunnels and other facilities that lead through the control room. This level boasts a huge amount of variety. You have indoor firefights against squads of elites with interconnecting bridges. You got massive open areas for vehicle combat, one-on-one fights against tough enemies, fights where you're being ganged up on. It's really good stuff. Sometimes you'll come across sleeping grunts. They aren't exclusive to this level though, and they're pretty cute and peaceful until you pistol whip their skulls open. You can find every weapon in the game up until now in this level as well. It's also the only level that lets you drive the human-made Scorpion tank. It's got a massive gun that deals a hell of a lot of damage, and Marines can hop on the sides of the tank and shoot off of it, making this thing a force to be reckoned with. You can also drive some of the other Covenant vehicles like the Banshees and Ghosts if you can get your hands on them. You've just got so much freedom in this mission, so many different ways of approaching scenarios, so many different weapons and vehicles to put to use. It's kind of a testament to how good Bungie's approach to level design is. This is the exact mission where the difficulty gets to a point where you can't just aim and shoot anymore. You gotta get movement down. You gotta develop a good strategy with your weapons, and even decide which vehicle to use, if any. At the same time the game gets significantly harder, it offers you so much more freedom, and so it remains challenging and fun without being frustrating. And if it's still too easy for you, you just gotta turn up the difficulty to Legendary for the extra challenge, which requires a bit more finesse. Overall, this level is just a blast to play through. It has anything you can ask for and more. Outdoor combat, indoor combat, air combat, ground vehicle combat, pretty much everything. Even the enemy squad compositions are just spot on. Like you'll be on a bridge full of elites, and the bridge parallel to yours has a bunch of grunts and jackals shooting at you with ranged weapons, so you have to duck in and out of cover and also maneuver around the elite zealots with energy swords. So many different fun scenarios like that, and some of the coolest looking scenery in the game as well to top it off. Okay, enough gushing about this level. We've got even more coming up. So after battling your way through the place, you end up finding the control room and insert Cortana's chip into the console. Something's off in Cortana's speech pattern though. She uses vocabulary she normally doesn't and changes from her usual purple color. She explains that something horrible is buried within Halo, something that the Covenant fears. She realizes that Captain Keyes is in danger and frantically orders you to hurry out and find him before it's too late. Captain Keyes has been out of contact for over 12 hours. The last transmission from his dropship was in this swamp area, so a Pelican drops you off here and you go search for him. This time you don't have any Marines helping you, so you're on your own. And almost immediately you can notice something is off. The swamp is eerily quiet, and for some reason there's a bunch of grunts and jackals running around with no guidance. There's also some very strange readings coming from your motion sensor. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, there is a motion sensor. I haven't mentioned it yet because I barely even look at it. Anyway, after shortly exploring the swamp, you find your way into this installation. You take a lift down and run across a Covenant squad, but they're behaving a bit weirdly. For whatever reason, they are poised to attack, but are taken by surprise when they see you. After exploring the compound for a bit, you see clear signs of battle. It could be that Captain Keyes is pinned down somewhere here with a squad of Marines. Later you find the Marine who's all alone, and he's also going insane. If you go close to him, he'll try to shoot you. I mean, that's odd. I guess he's having some kind of advanced PTSD. I mean, I don't know how much stress a Space Marine goes through fighting aliens on a daily basis. I guess we'll just have to leave him be. Shortly after, we walk through this door and whoa, some dead Marine was plastered to it. The chief looks around and finds a Marine's helmet and starts playing the video recording to find out what happened. Shows their Pelican ride, them throwing around a couple jokes, nothing too important. They head through the swamp and find the same installation we did. They find an elite that's already dead and his body has been mangled. They rendezvous with Captain Keyes and head into the same room we're in. And geez, what the hell is that? A bunch of small creatures flood into the room and overwhelm their entire squad. Well, that's not good. Then, uh-oh, something's banging on the door. They're coming for you next. More and more come, one after another. Then these humanoid ones start leaping 10 feet across the air to attack you. This is what the Marines would call FUBAR. I guess this is what killed all the Covenant that were stationed here. Yeah, so these guys are called the Flood. because that's what they do. They flood whatever area they're in like a disease, and mercilessly try to kill you so they can use your body as a puppet. Anyway, Captain Keyes obviously isn't here, and this is no place to stay, so you haul ass back up to the surface. On your way out, you find my favorite weapon in the whole game, the shotgun. Aw yeah. So essentially this game, in the matter of minutes, turned from future soldier against intelligent aliens to a zombie survival shooter. And man, is a shotgun good. Shotguns are always good against zombies, aren't they? So anyway, you start blasting away the flood as you head your way back up. You end up finding another squad of Marines, and you lead them back out into the swamp so you can find a clearing the Pelican can land in and get the hell out of there. And man, this mission is pretty well done if you ask me. I mean, all the subtleties that hint that something is off when you land, all the creepy atmosphere when you're exploring, and then it all blows up in your face and you're running and gunning your way through a horde of alien zombies. Yeah, this is a pretty perfect introduction to a completely new enemy type occurring halfway through the whole game. It's a huge twist that ramps up the stakes even more. So out of nowhere, a bunch of flying robots appear with laser beams and take out the remaining flood. This floating orb guy introduces himself as 343 Guilty Spark. Apparently he's the monitor of this Halo ring. He explains that someone has released the flood and his function is to prevent it from leaving this installation. And apparently he needs your assistance in doing so, and promptly teleports you away onto your next mission. The monitor teleports you into a library that holds the Index, a tool that will allow you to activate Halo's defense system to destroy the Flood. And the Flood is the only enemy you encounter in this level. The whole place is crawling with them. In order to reach the Index, you're gonna have to battle an entire horde of these guys. A lot of the humanoid enemies can carry weapons and shoot them at you as well, making it an extra tough level to beat. Thankfully, you can pick up a shotgun and wreak some havoc. And boy is a shotgun powerful, as shotguns should be in my opinion. You can take out any flood with basically a single well-placed shot. Fighting through the large halls of the library, frantically loading your weapons, running away from the flood, trying to outmaneuver them before they surround you. This mission is pretty intense. Maybe the most intense in the entire game. It's also pretty difficult. You're gonna have to formulate your own strategy for dealing with these guys pretty quickly or you'll die. The flood will jump out of holes in the walls, take shots at you from vantage points, rush you all at once and blow up in your face, and so on. The shotgun is an all-purpose tool, but is wasted on the small flood forms. You probably want to switch to an assault rifle to deal with these little guys. So you essentially battle your way through the entire library as the monitor escorts you towards the Index. This level really puts your skills to the test, especially on the higher difficulties. Now I know why the hardest difficulty is called Legendary. If you get through this mission on that difficulty, then you're an absolute legend. The best thing is though, anyone can do it. Anyone can master a perfect strategy to get through each of the levels on Legendary. It's completely doable if you're just willing to deal with some trial and error. I remember playing this mission on split screen co-op back in the day, and it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in a shooter. Oh yeah, that's probably something I should mention. You can play through the whole campaign with 2 players, though it's a bit goofy since you both have the Master Chief's player model. It is still one of the best games to co-op through though. Anyways, so after going through hell and back, and killing more flood than you can count, you retrieve the Index for 343 Guilty Spark, and you both teleport all the way back to the control room so you can activate Halo and stop the flood from spreading. After you approach the command console and insert the Index, Cortana suddenly pops out and stops you. She explains that you were fooled. The Halo ring won't kill the flood, it will kill the flood's food source. It'll cause a huge explosion that will destroy a massive area of space, wipe the galaxy clean of all sentient life. And now the monitor turns hostile on you so it can carry out its duties. 343 Guilty Spark teleports away and his sentinels attack. You plug Cortana back into your helmet and prepare to fight. Those flying robot sentinels attack you with their beam weapons. Human weapons don't do much damage against them, but most energy weapons can take them out pretty easily. Though you gotta be careful since their beam weapons drain your shields pretty fast, especially when there are multiple of them. You fight your way out and you can see some Covenant again. Hey, long time no see, it's been a while. You're actually back out into the snowy landscape area we were earlier in the game. This time it's dark though, and there's a light snowstorm. I don't know why, I wasn't aware Halo had a changing weather system, but hey, it's a great ambience and it fits. Cortana explains that it's possible to destroy the Halo ring if you can trigger an explosion of sufficient size to destabilize the ring. Cortana believes that the crashed Pillar of Autumn will work just fine, but first you need to buy some time. And so this mission sees you going to destroy a few pulse generators that power Halo's super weapon to prevent the monitor from finding a way to use it. Despite the narrative making it seem like time is of the essence, this mission can actually be completed at a pretty relaxed pace. You'll be covering the big open area present earlier in the game, in a three-way battle between you, the Covenant, and the Flood. The Covenant brought their full force and have highly trained elites and many ground and air vehicles. Actually, to reach some of the pulse generators, you have to fly banshees around the map, getting into dogfights and doing bombing runs. Then for hitting the pulse generators, you have to battle back into indoor areas from the same earlier level. Well, now you may notice a pattern starting to pop up. At this point, we're going to be revisiting a lot of the places we were in previously in the game. But what's interesting is while they are the same places, they actually feel quite new, since so much has changed since the last visit. I mean, whether it's the fact that everywhere is infested with the Flood, or the weather has changed, or the time of day has changed, the atmosphere completely shifts from the standard space opera setting into more of an apocalyptic sci-fi setting. And this level showcases that perfectly. There's like a feeling of dread in the air, a certain silent unease pervading the landscape. It's some great stuff. This level actually boasts a surprising amount of freedom in terms of how you approach each situation. There are weapon drops everywhere, and you'll have to decide which ones are the best to use, and how to keep your ammo situation in check. I think you can actually find every weapon in the game in this level too. Alright, so after you battle through a bunch of Covenant and Flood, and destroy the pulse generators, Cortana is able to teleport you out just like the Monitor did by tapping into the teleportation grid. It's a risky maneuver, but you only need to do it once. Cortana teleports us out so we can go find Captain Keyes and detonate the Pillar of Autumn. Cortana locates Captain Keyes' transponder signal aboard the Truth and Reconciliation, the Covenant cruiser from earlier in the game. The Covenant are basically in full retreat to abandon Halo ever since they found the Flood. The cruiser is already being attacked by a horde of Flood, and the remnants of the Covenant forces are trying to stop them from taking over the ship. After Cortana teleports you in, you soon get overwhelmed by the Flood and are forced to jump out of the ship from a gaping hole and into a pool of leaking coolant. Now you're down in the area close to the gravity well, and you have to use it to get back up. And now you're basically walking through a war zone between the Covenant and the Flood, trying to find your way back up to Captain Keyes. It's really interesting seeing how the two styles of AI are being pitted against one another. Covenant with their squad tactics and hierarchy, versus the Flood that just bum rush everything. The Covenant can actually hold their own for a while, but eventually they get overwhelmed. Especially when you intervene by lobbing grenades into the middle of everybody. After fighting your way through the canyon, you'll reach the gravity well and get lifted back up into the ship. Captain Keyes is located in the control room, and there's a lot of Flood and Covenant between here and there. Fighting through this level is actually really fun. The game is no longer concerned with setting everything up for the player. The world no longer revolves around you. Clear that you're simply a third party in a battle independent of your actions. You can actually sit back for a bit and watch the Covenant and Flood engaging each other, instead of trying to run through them and getting yourself killed. In any case, I got my trusty shotgun with me, so all is well. As you approach the control room, you can hear Captain Keyes over the comm ordering you to leave him and get the hell out of here. Of course you don't listen because you need his implant to interact with the Pillar of Autumn. Entering the control room, you see huge biomass next to the control consoles. Oh man, it's Keyes. He's been merged into a big ball of biomatter. He's basically dead and you're forced to rip the implant out of him. Alright, so now you have the keys to the Pillar of Autumn. It's time to get off this ship and leave the Covenant to their fate. A dropship enters the shuttle bay escorted by a couple Banshees. You can just jump out and steal one of the Banshees and fly out of there and head to the Pillar of Autumn and blow this joint once and for all. Alright, we've made it to the final mission in the game. Chief barely makes it into the Pillar of Autumn before crashing his Banshee into the side of it. And now we're back into a familiar sight as we navigate through the same hallways we did in the beginning of the game. Although this time everything is a complete wreck with a bad infestation problem. It's alright though, by detonating the ship's fusion reactors we can destroy Halo, the Flood, and the remaining Covenant fleet, and thus prevent any of these things from threatening humanity. It's you and your AI companion against an entire ship full of bad guys. We need to get to the bridge so we can use the captain's neural implant to overload the fusion engines. On your way there you make it past Covenant, Flood, and the Monitor Sentinels all duking it out. Eventually you reach the bridge. You insert Cortana's chip back into the Pillar of Autumn's terminal. She starts up a timed self-destruct sequence so you can make it onto a lifeboat and leave Halo before it's destroyed. Unfortunately, 343 Guilty Spark is already here, and stops the countdown from progressing. Master Chief decides to head to the engineering deck and blow up the engine's fusion reactors himself. Cortana exposes a way to do this by pulling back some exhaust couplings and lobbing a few grenades inside. Throughout this whole sequence there's a ton of Flood and Sentinels battling each other and you, as you try and destroy the reactors one by one. It actually works though. The engines go critical and Cortana estimates that you have 15 minutes to escape the Pillar of Autumn. You ride up a long elevator shaft to get a signal and call for pickup. After finding a parking area with a bunch of warthogs, you take one and punch it to the extraction point. When you get there though, you see your ride in the distance on fire and getting shot down by a couple banshees, and it crashes. Well, guess we're not getting picked up today. Cortana scrambles to find another method off the ship, and she detects one fighter jet still docked in the launch bay. If you move now, you can make it. Cue intense driving sequence.
Up ahead, there's a gap in the trench. At top speed, we should be able to clear it.
Phew, we made it to the hangar. Now it's the final run to the fighter ship so we can get the hell out of here. You just barely make it out in time before the Pillar of Autumn's reactors explode and rip a giant fracture in the Halo ring. Yeah, I don't think anyone will be using that anytime soon. You and Cortana can finally relax now. An entire Covenant armada obliterated, no survivors from the Pillar of Autumn crash, and the Flood prevented from spreading elsewhere in the galaxy. Alright, so Halo 1's campaign is over, and I haven't even talked about the incredible soundtrack or the multiplayer modes yet. Halo's soundtrack, which was composed by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatori, is absolutely legendary. Single out any human being who's played Halo before and they can probably sing the theme song to you on the spot. It's such a memorable tune that like your brain creates a department in your memory for the sole purpose of preserving it. And it's not even the only standout track in the game. There are really good tracks for combat, suspense, exploration, creepiness with the Flood. Hell, there's even creepy combat tracks. The entire soundtrack is just a behemoth of good sci-fi orchestra. Now back on the original Xbox, you could play this game in split screen, and you could even link multiple Xboxes together and have a huge LAN party. Halo 1 on Xbox didn't have online multiplayer, so this was the only way to play against others. Of course, the 2003 release on PC had online multiplayer through dedicated servers, and then the Master Chief Collection had it through matchmaking. The multiplayer component isn't super in-depth, but it is pretty fun. As you can imagine, the guns in the single player are just as good as in the multiplayer. The Magnum, shotgun, sniper rifle, and rocket launcher pretty much dominate multiplayer. The custom edition for PC also came with a couple new weapons like the flamethrower and fuel rod gun, but they're only available in multiplayer mode. And the Master Chief Collection version also has them. And you've got the game modes. Slayer, which is basically team deathmatch, free-for-all, capture the flag, you know, the usual. Capture the flag is my favorite because you got a bunch of vehicles and weapons in one big map, and you gotta work together with your team to win. The maps are actually surprisingly good, offering a healthy amount of verticality and multiple approach angles. I don't think it can be overstated just how fun it is hopping in a Warthog with a couple buddies and taking the fight to the enemy team. Another thing is that the Master Chief Collection version is actually the Anniversary Edition, which includes new graphics and audio for the campaign if you're into that. What's really cool is that you can switch between the original and Anniversary graphics at the press of a button. I'm not even sure what other remasters have this capability, but if I was making a remaster of a game, it would definitely be something on my to-do list. It doesn't even need to be a toggleable option while playing. It just should be an option in general to switch between the old and new graphics, because it basically pleases everyone. You can play with whatever you prefer, and also switch between them so you can see the changes firsthand, and appreciate both the old and new styles. Alright, so that's Halo Combat Evolved. I think I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about, maybe except for all the custom game modes, maps, weapons, and other user-created mods for the custom edition for PC. But there's some great videos online you can go and look up if you want to see that stuff. The campaign alone is reason enough to warrant me making this video. The levels are just designed in a way that fosters fun, and the enemy behavior is good enough to give you a tough challenge, and to make them feel like foes worthy of being battled. Not even to mention how cool the designs for the Covenant aliens are. I mean, the elites alone look really cool with their sleek reflective armor and four-pronged mouths. And the way the Covenant forces yell callouts to the rest of the squad is pretty cool. Honestly, I'm not an expert on voice acting, but I think it's pretty good in Halo as far as I can tell. They've got a number of great weapons, each of them have their purpose, and an amazing soundtrack to pump you up in some great gameplay. Most of the characters in the game are really charming as well, and it just invests you in the narrative and gameplay even more. Halo's just one of those games that you'll probably never forget. Well, that's that. Not sure what game the next video will be on, but until then, I hope you had a good time experiencing Halo with me, and thanks for watching.